So today we have Notebook or Notebook Labs with us. We're going to do an AMA with them. So why don't you guys just start by introducing yourselves, what you do in the protocol, and then feel free to explain to the community what the protocol is all about.
Definitely. Yes, we're Notebook Labs. We're a zero knowledge KYC and identity authentication protocol. We were started in January of 2022, and we came in with a hypothesis that there was a lot of fraud there was some fraud in Web3, and that we could improve safety and trust within Web3 whilst also preserving privacy and decentralization through zero knowledge. So we built a protocol that allows for private KYC and identity authentication, and ensures that users can be trusted whilst preserving the ethos of Web3. So we currently have contracts on Arbitrum and are looking to integrate with people through a bunch of different use cases. So we can do things like permission pools for DeFi. We can allow you to anonymously verify the humanity of your users as well, and we also can be used for identity authentication and different DID, and we have different DID services.
All right, great. And then I guess that would lead me to ask why did you guys choose Arbitrum to build those smart contracts on, and is it also compatible with other chains?
Yeah, definitely. So we looked at Arbitrum because zero knowledge proofs can be gas intensive to verify, and Arbitrum had really great gas fees and still had a good confirmation time. So we've started by building everything on Arbitrum because we think it's the premier kind of EVM compatible chain. However, we're expanding to other chains in the next couple months.
Yeah. Right. And just to add to that, I think we've been talking with the team for the past few months and been super helpful with iterations on kind of reaching out to various customers, and definitely open to kind of helping bring zero knowledge to consumers.
All right, and I guess the goal is to kind of have cross-chain identity using like privacy KYC through Web3.
Yeah, definitely. We built out a protocol to be cross-chain. So how it works is when people kind of log into Notebook, they get added to a Merkle tree on Arbitrum, but that gets broadcasted to multiple different chains we have like an application-specific rollup. So we have this kind of cross-chain interoperability.
Okay, and then where there's KYC involved, how does that work for regulation, and how do you guys plan to respond to the future of regulation?
Definitely, we think the future of crypto there'll be kind of different roles for KYC. So something that we're really kind of bullish on is that a lot of people are bringing real world assets on chain. Like JP Morgan recently made an announcement, and we think there'll be a thriving kind of part of DeFi that will have permissioned access. So there will be permission pools where you could trade bonds, for instance. So Notebook has kind of developed a KYC solution where we can be as privacy preserving as possible while still being KYC compliant. So we can allow traditional consumers to gain access to an entire new suite of real world assets while still kind of retaining their privacy and making sure as few people as possible know information about their wallet address.
And so are you guys currently compliant with the current, I guess, landscape around that?
Yeah, definitely. So each different kind of bank has their own set of KYC requirements. And there's obviously like different acts like the Bank Secrecy Act and things of that nature. So we're compliant with multiple different standards.
So where do you guys feel that the privacy is tech, like what you're building, is most needed in Web3?
Yeah, I think in general, I think everyone should care about privacy in Web3 to some extent. I think because blockchains are immutable and persistent, data leaks in Web3 where your identity gets linked to your wallet have so much higher stakes than anywhere else. So I think everyone should care about ensuring that as little information as possible is associated with their wallet, so that because of just how persistent and immutable these privacy breaches can be.
Yeah, and I feel like a big part of what has made the communities grow in Web3 so fast is the idea that we have data autonomy, and this just kind of helps empower that vision.
Definitely.
Yeah. And sort of another reason why privacy is necessary is with these higher, as Nat mentioned, there's immutability, and especially with these higher risk sort of credentials like KYC, you really need these sorts of privacy assurances. Otherwise, you risk losing a lot of users. We've seen this with various protocols that have tried KYC, or even for things like airdrops. And so we're really trying to help these protocols hold their users accountable while promising their users that their data won't be leaked.
Yeah, I guess like when you think about data leaks, in the Web2 world, you have like email and phone number leaks, and then you start getting a lot of spam mail on a lower level. But that can also open the door to being exposed to like larger level scams and hacks. If people like can send you links and everything like that. In that respect, how do you see it happening in Web3?
Definitely. Yeah, I think if people's personal information gets tied to their wallet, there's a lot of risks they have with people kind of tracking their transactions or knowing an unnecessary amount of information. And I think over the next few years, people will be doing a lot more of their life on chain. A lot more regular transactions will be happening on chain. And I think eventually it will become a little bit as if someone saw your entire like bank statement and all like your subscriptions and payments, and that it would be like a huge privacy risk, and different people could like leverage that data to kind of like profile you or send you spam or impersonate you.
Or target you with large ad campaigns?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so when it comes to like KYC, people typically think centralized exchanges. So first, why don't you just give the audience, a really bare bones, explanation of what KYC really means?
Yeah, so KYC is a very kind of broad term for actually like a lot of different requirements. So, for instance, like one of the set of requirements is so KYC often refers to like money services businesses who are kind of like trading money. So this is exactly what kind of a centralized exchange is doing. And then banks can also be under this. And then there's kind of two different legal frameworks which KYC entails, and that's kind of like the bank has to like identify who they're dealing with, and then they also have to do due diligence on the person. Um, so in that process, people like a bank or a centralized exchange will both kind of identify you through gathering your information, and they'll do some due diligence. So they'll run like anti-money laundering checks to ensure that you haven't been flagged and things of this nature. So all of these services we can provide, but often in crypto, especially, different forms of KYC are required without such like a strong framework. So, for instance, like um, a protocol might be offering like a refund for an NFT, and then they wouldn't need to go through that same level of due diligence. So, really, KYC is like this kind of broad brush um, kind of acronym for a lot of different legal kind of frameworks that different people have to comply to.
Yeah, and in general, it's mostly just like a best effort for given the context as Matt mentioned. I think it's definitely not some sort of like basic list of checkboxes, as we saw with Coinbase recently. And so our goal is pretty much just to help these protocols, execute whatever KYC requirements they think is appropriate and whatever they think constitutes a best effort.
Yeah, and then I guess in the Web3 side of things, outside of centralized exchanges, where do you see KYC being the most useful or relevant, if it is that easy to answer?
Yeah, I think kind of what we touched on before with the growth of like JP Morgan recently announced that they're bringing billions of dollars of they plan to bring billions of dollars of real world assets on chain. We think this kind of permission DeFi, where you have traditional financial assets like mortgage-backed securities on chain, so that any kind of consumer can access these financial instruments and assets which were normally only available to big banks. And we think that kind of decentralization could be really important and give consumers access to a whole kind of different financial world. So we think KYC will be really important for the growth of that side. And then I think there's a lot of small use cases in crypto where KYC is currently being used. So, for instance, like NFT refunds, we mentioned before. There's a couple of different like platforms which need KYC to prevent Sybil attacks. But I think it's still important that every one of these vendors have privacy preserving KYC, because if your data gets leaked and associated with your wallet just once, it can have really long-term serious impacts on your privacy and how much information people know about your wallet.
Right. Yeah. Once it gets leaked, it's kind of hard to go back. Yeah. There's no like procedures in place around that to undo it.
Definitely.
All right. Is there a lot of identity solutions in Web3 already?
Yeah, there are. I think we've been since we started, we've been like really happy by the growth of DID protocols. There's a couple other similar protocols doing kind of KYC, and yeah, it's great to see the space developing. I think we've kind of Notebook started with this unique approach. We wanted to use zero-knowledge cryptography because we thought it could help a lot with privacy and also interoperability, which we mentioned before, where you can kind of do KYC once, and then from the user experience side, they can use that credential on like different chains whilst retaining decentralization and privacy, which we think are both really important. So I think we're still like a somewhat kind of unique player in this intersection between zero knowledge and KYC.
So do you need to, like, if you're using it cross-chain, do you need to be integrated with other protocols or dApps on other chains, or does it not work that way?
Yeah, so how you could imagine it works is you do the KYC flow with Notebook once, and you would be connected to the Arbitrum chain. You do that, and then your kind of credential will get added to a Merkle tree on Arbitrum, and then through kind of like an application-specific rollup, it will get broadcasted to different chains. But from a user experience side, they won't really see anything happening. They'll just be able to use a dApp on a different chain and still kind of log in with Notebook. And the dApp will still be able to verify the zero knowledge proof to ensure that they did KYC.
And from the user side, they just be logging into any of their existing non-custodial wallets and then opening the dApp browser and then using the protocol through there.
Exactly, yeah. And they don't even need to remember like a mnemonic or anything. They just sign a message with their, like, for instance, like their MetaMask key, just like a MetaMask prompt, they sign it. And then they're able to like generate the zero knowledge proof in the browser. And it's super simple.
Okay, and then from the Web 2 side of KYC and identity protocols, do you guys play a role in that at all, or is it strictly in the Web3 landscape, or how does that work?
Definitely. Yeah, we're definitely exploring Web 2 applications, but we still think that Web 3 is the most promising use case. I think the privacy concerns in Web 3 are so much more important than in Web 2 because you have this like immutability and persistence. And we also really think that KYC in Web 2 has been around for a while, but there's a lot of kind of new applications that KYC can enable in Web 3, such as bringing these real world assets on chain that we're really bullish about, and we kind of want to be a part of.
So in theory, if like, let's say a Web 2, I don't know, for example, social media company wanted to integrate into Web 3, could they basically partner with Notebook to help integrate the way that the on-chain, personal user data is stored or verified?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they'd definitely be able to integrate with us. And we have like a very simple, and they wouldn't need to be able to write any zero knowledge cryptography with like a very simple JavaScript library that they'd be able to use. And it'd be like a straightforward integration, which wouldn't require like an understanding of specific cryptography or anything like that.
Is this kind of application also usable for just, I guess, logging in to prove, I guess it's your like character account in a game or something, or?
Definitely. So we built one of our logins is OAuth. It's like satisfies like OAuth compliance. So you can imagine it like a zero knowledge wrapper around OAuth. So if you wanted to prove, so for instance, a lot of the time you'll like log in with GitHub and something will like request GitHub credentials. If you wanted to log in and like prove that you were a member of, let's say, like the Notebook Labs GitHub organization, but you didn't want the application to know which member of Notebook Labs you were, you can kind of wrap the GitHub AP like OAuth system around Notebook, and then you can prove that you are like a member of the Notebook Labs GitHub repo using OAuth. So that could be similar for like social media if you wanted to prove that you had like a Twitter account with like a blue check, but you didn't want anyone to know which check mark you had. You could wrap it around this kind of OAuth system.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
and this even works for like Web 2, like pure Web 2 applications. So if a Web 2 application, wants to move to this kind of decentralized, trustless model of privacy, but they don't want to make their users, use MetaMask or actually integrate with Web3 themselves, we have that sort of off-chain implementation as well for those customers.
All right, cool. I guess another in that same vein, I'm curious, is this applicable also if you like lose a password and need to reset a password? Could you somehow like integrate a protocol like this into an app for solving those kind of problems?
Definitely, yeah. Like if a client of ours saw like Notebook as a way to kind of, yeah, like you could prove that you have the same Notebook account and then kind of use that to authenticate yourself and then kind of get permission to redo your password. Yeah, exactly.
Right, just keeps it all on chain. I'm just thinking from like a very like day-to-day thing, like the basic stuff users would be doing, because I forget passwords daily.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you could use it almost as like a master login. It would obviously put like a lot of importance on not losing your MetaMask secret key, for instance. But yeah, you could definitely use Notebook as like a master login.
So okay, there's already a lot of importance on not losing your seed phrase.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So when you think of the future of like institutional DeFi, where a lot of users are getting involved in Web3s around that, where does Notebook come in for enabling all that stuff from a privacy standpoint?
Yeah, I think with institutional DeFi, it's really important that institutions remember to keep it decentralized and private. I think there's no point kind of having the system where everything is centralized, where it's almost as if like you're dealing with a bank all over again. The only difference is the payment happens on chain. I think that won't really be a meaningful change from the status quo. So I think Notebook, we've kind of built this small piece of that process where we've solved the KYC and we've made it private and decentralized. So we would like for institutions to kind of maintain the privacy focus, integrate with something like that. But we'd also really want if they would really like to see if institutions tried their best to keep the rest of the flow as decentralized as possible, to kind of maintain the ethos of Web3.
Yeah, of course. So with permission, like in DeFi with permission lending protocols, where do you guys see that going when it comes to privacy and how protocols like you can get involved?
Definitely.
Yeah. I think a big issue is, if they do some sort of permissioned system, and if they do require KYC, they're going to experience a large drop off in the number of people who are willing to sign on, because of just the convenience aspects, and then also the privacy standpoint. These are Web3 native people. They're used to kind of staying anonymous and not providing this detailed personal information. And so it's useful to, actually provide this assurance to your users, that, their KYC information is processed in a decentralized way, and they're able to prove that in a decentralized way, while remaining compliant.
And then what provisions would you guys provide as well?
Yeah, so this can be anything from like a simple AML check. We also basically any sort of existing Web2 KYC or AML or OFAC process we can port onto Web3. We just need to set up that sort of verifier.
Wait, just give me the definition of AML real quick.
Yeah, it's like the anti-money laundering list. So these are like sanctioned individuals that you don't want to sort of transact with.
Okay, cool. Kind of like a blacklist in a way, just like if you've acted in malicious ways too many times.
Yeah, and as I said before, this is sort of like something that already exists in Web 2 and is already required by most MSPs, and so we're just kind of bringing that on chain.
All right, and that ties into like the regulatory landscape and how you're trying to remain compliant in that scope.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think to build on that, there's a lot of kind of AML things we can provide as well, where we're integrating with like the Chainalysis API, for instance, and they obviously do screening of wallets. So for clients, we're able to check both kind of on and off chain risks for a wallet and an individual if there's any like money laundering risks.
And even with all that happening, there's still, their KYC is private, like this.
Yeah, like so kind of what happens is all the checks done on their like personal KYC information is kept separate, and there's like we don't know like the link between their the information they give for their off-chain identity to their wallet. Like we don't have that like map. So those checks are kind of done like completely distinct from each other, but that information gets like encrypted to you can imagine it like it gets encrypted to the public key of like a regulator. So if a regulator came, they would still be able to kind of see the necessary details if someone got flagged for money laundering. So where you can ensure that like the only people who kind of have that key information is kind of like a regulator if they really need to see what's happening and if there's any compliance risks.
Okay, and when this kind of stuff is on chain, like what does it look like? For example, when I'm on Arbiscan or ETHScan and you see a transaction, like how does, I guess, like a KYC on chain like look like?
Definitely. So the kind of average thing will be that a user wants to prove that they satisfy KYC. So there's a big kind of Merkle tree, which is like a kind of like a hash tree of little bits of information, which is all like hashed and encrypted. And then a user will kind of you do a zero knowledge proof showing that they have like a leaf in the tree or they are like someone who's been KYC'd. And they'll just kind of like attach the zero knowledge proof to a transaction. And the proof will get verified by the smart contract. They'll be like, yep, this person satisfies KYC. But they won't know like which individual it is. And then the transaction will proceed.
Right, like the it'll just look like some long string of numbers on chain, but neither party knows the actual identity, name, and
Exactly.
info. Well, and then that brings me, I guess you mentioned zero knowledge proofs. Just wondering why ZK proofs for KYC on chain?
Yeah, I think ZK proofs were we kind of discovered them in our cryptography classes at Stanford. They were something that we thought would really revolutionize the space. They'd obviously been used for scaling, but I think in terms of being able to do this, we thought that like KYC is one of like the pieces of information that people want to be kept private at all costs. So we think kind of using this like robust privacy infrastructure that is zero knowledge cryptography could be a way to kind of change KYC for the better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear ZK proof, they only think of layer 2 scaling, but its application is used in simpler ways that are applicable at the moment, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then ZK proofs have also been very helpful for, we want to kind of, we mentioned before how you could do KYC once on Arbitrum and then use that same credential on different chains. So obviously zero knowledge proofs is very important for being able to kind of broadcast the Merkle tree on Arbitrum to different chains, and kind of like roll up all that data on Arbitrum so that users can still access it and prove KYC.
Cool. And then when it comes to storing that, like if I'm storing, just for example, like a driver's license or a passport on chain, is it basically like a soulbound NFT the way the token is read?
Yeah, kind of what happens is, so there's a bunch of different flows. So, but at no point do we store like the actual document on chain. Normally it's some kind of like summary. So for instance, with a driver's license, you would like query a KYC API and then like a Web2 API and then kind of store a signed copy of the API request in like a hash format on chain. If it's a passport, passports have NFC chips, which are like signed by a government public key saying that you are who you are and certain things like that. So just the kind of data on the NFC chip would be stored on chain, obviously in like a hash format. So yeah, there's kind of these like summary pieces of data which are stored on chain rather than like a whole driver's license, just for like gas cost considerations.
Right, because if you were using it to, do all of your logins and you did that a bunch every day, like through a company or something, if it was on a layer 1, you'd be racking up quite a lot of gas fees.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then for kind of perspective for gas fees, they're kind of around $1 on a layer 1 and then like a couple of cents on Arbitrum. So we've made Notebook very efficient and easy to use.
All right, are you guys cool if we open up to some community questions?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions for the Notebook team, just raise your hand. I see we've had one person who requested for a while. See if they're still here. Hey, Arab.eth, do you have a question for the team? Just make sure you unmute. All right, I'll bring on the next request. We have Pradeep here. Hey, Pradeep, you're on stage.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Nat, thanks a lot for giving us an overview of the notebook. Couple of questions here. One is that have you already integrated with a bunch of wallets? Because we are already building a wallet and would like to integrate with a solution like this. Two aspects is one is the zero knowledge proof based KYC. And second element is the AML kind of checks that you said you're already working with analysis. Because on one side, we want to make sure that the consumer keeps her things private and safe. On the other side, as wallet builders, we also want to ensure that we don't get unnecessarily embroiled into some legal issues when some bad actor gets into the system and gets things out. So from your perspective, how deeply are both of these integrated into the solution you're looking at? And if, as a wallet, in case we want to integrate, what are the steps?
Definitely, yeah. That's a great question. So we've integrated with a couple of bigger wallets like MetaMask and Phantom Wallet. We're always looking to do more integrations. Yeah, it'd be great if you could DM me after this and we can have a chat. The steps are pretty simple. Kind of what we do is we do we have a system where we can do like constant chain analysis API requests on the wallets who have used Notebook. So just kind of by being a general, like just by integrating with Notebook in general, you won't need to set up any kind of custom logic to get those chain analysis AML benefits. So yeah, it should be a pretty straightforward integration.
Awesome. So by the way, your DMs are closed. If you can open, I'll just ping you there.
Awesome. Yeah. Apologies for that. I'll sort that out.
So based on that question, it made me think of something. So if, let's say I'm creating a non-custodial wallet platform or app, basically would I be able to have my wallet, like if I partner with you guys, would I be able to have my wallet integrate your protocol through the wallet creation process?
Yeah, definitely. You'd be able to get the user to like fulfill the KYC flow, and then yeah, you could directly link it. So yeah, you could definitely embed Notebook into the onboarding process.
Do you guys see something like this as a way to help reduce the amount of botting that happens in crypto?
Yeah, definitely. Like the first use case we spent a lot of time on was Sybil resistance for airdrops. Because obviously airdrops get Sybil attacked all the time. We saw it earlier this year with Optimism and Juno having to kind of claw back through the list and find all the bots who kind of attack the airdrop. So I think this is like a way, we're hoping that, you know, a long time down the line, Notebook credentials are just kind of checked automatically to ensure that people are not bots and are real humans.
Yeah, and even for like peer-to-peer attestations, this is something to consider if you're building a wallet. Is, you know, when a user transacts with another wallet, then they can see that maybe this wallet has, or this identity has certain badges. Maybe it's gone through KYC. It's proved that it's not on any sort of sanctioned list, and so you kind of know who you're transacting with without actually knowing who they are.
Yeah, that was one of the first like I guess relevant use cases I was thinking of when just from a lot of DeFi experience.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Any other questions from the audience or community? Also, do you guys have anything else you'd like to cover that I didn't bring up?
Yeah, if anything, I'd just like to reiterate what Drew said at the start. I think, yeah, the Arbitrum team has been very helpful for us. We've been kind of talking to a lot of our initial clients through the connections you guys are able to provide. So yeah, just like to extend a thank you for everything you've helped us with.
I speak on behalf of the team where I say it's our pleasure always. Oh, we have another question here. Maxime.
Hello.
Hey, we can hear you, Maxime.
Yeah, thank you guys for clarifying your technology for the use cases. I have one question. Probably I missed something. Probably you already covered it. But the question is, you mentioned that it will be enough to pass KYC only one time, right? With you. And is there a risk that I pass KYC and transfer this KYC to another person? Is there such kind of risk, and do you mitigate it?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So there's a lot of banks will get you to redo KYC a couple times, like typically like once a year, once every 6 months. So one thing we do is when you kind of fulfill KYC, one of the pieces of data we store is the date you pass KYC, and that way when you do zero knowledge proofs, that date will be outputted. So eventually, after some period of time, some dApps won't let you pass here, won't accept your zero knowledge proof because the date was so long in the past, and then you will have the option to kind of redo KYC to update that date.
Yeah, and for fraud prevention, the KYC process involves, depending on what the protocol determines it needs, the KYC process can involve sort of a face scan on top of that to kind of verify that the user owns their driver's license or passport.
Okay, I see. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Maxime. I'm curious where you guys are. This is kind of the space you're in and probably have been for a while. Have you seen, either from an institutional side, business side, or even customer facing side, a lot of current use of this kind of technology or demand for it?
Yeah, I think we've kind of seen a change. So initially we built this targeting kind of civil resistance for airdrops. And then we kind of started to enter the bear market and much less people doing airdrops. And then we kind of, for a little bit, were focusing on peer-to-peer attestations and kind of different applications outside of KYC. And I think very recently we've seen the growth of kind of people wanting to bring real-world assets on chain. So we're now looking at that. So I think in general, this kind of technology is quite new. And there's a lot of different potential use cases for it, which the space is really only kind of discovering. So we've been very agile and have kind of been exploring a lot of different ways to use this technology.
Yeah, but to reiterate, our current focus is definitely on that sort of institutional DeFi component and bringing institutional capital and assets on chain.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's where most of the volume is coming from right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. I think I'll wrap it up by asking, what's the best way for people to either try out a demo, get involved on socials?
Yeah,
Definitely.
feel free to follow us on Twitter. That's where we'll be posting most of our updates, and when we launch, that's also where we'll post that. We have a Telegram group that's just for these kinds of announcements as well. I don't know, Nat, do you have anything else in mind?
Yeah, and then I guess we're mainly kind of taking calls from dApps and institutions who are hoping to use our technology. So if you have anything, you can reach out to us kind of through Telegram or via the official Twitter page. And then, we're always happy to kind of show a demo, and it's always great to hear feedback.
Then I also noticed on your site that you guys are hiring. Is that still the case?
That is, yeah. So the roles we're kind of hiring for like an in-person, someone based in the Bay Area, software engineering role. So if you are that or you know anyone, please kind of reach out to us. There's like an email you can send an application to on our website, and then we're also always looking for like zero knowledge cryptographers who are interested in a role like this.
Great, and feel free to post any of these relevant links and resources in the comment thread on this Spaces.
Definitely, yeah. And to kind of give some more background on Notebook, we're still just three co-founders. We're still very early stage, so the roles we're hiring for will be kind of core pieces of the Notebook core team, and we'll have like a really important part to play in the future of kind of private authentication and KYC in Web3.
I saw you guys also earlier in the fall had a successful raise as well. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we completed a raise and we're led by Bain Capital Crypto, who, we're really appreciative of the team. We think they're like very technical, and some of their cryptographers, including Way, have been very helpful in kind of helping us design our protocol and audit our cryptography and ideas. So, we're very, very thankful to Bain Capital, and we, really appreciate their team and what they bring for us.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with in the future. There's a lot of building to be done in this sector, especially.
Definitely, yeah. And thanks a lot for having us on.